We are going to be working on this giant quarter panel dent here. As you can see, the thing is absolutely stretched out of whack. It's got, quite a bit of the edge of the panel is offline. We do have a gas cap here that will not close. We got a lower body line here that's just out of whack as well. You can see here I'm going to try to close it. It will not eject. I'm sorry, it will eject, but it will not stay into place. And you can see kind of the depth of the damage here, but let's go ahead and look what's underneath the iceberg here. Let's see what's down below. Giant dent. It is the impact point was right through that plastic piece that, as you can see there, it actually snapped off all the clips that attach it to the panel. However, did not break the piece, which I'm quite amazed by that. But you can see here just a big nasty dent. And we're going to be doing a Porta-Power tutorial here and showing you exactly how to move the bulk of the metal along without absolutely destroying it and chopping it up. As you guys know, my rapid metal movement technique, you've probably seen that in a couple other videos. If you haven't, well, welcome to my rapid metal movement technique here. And we're going to go ahead and, as you can see, the side of the panel is almost smashed up against the inside of that inner panel. So we're going to just get that thing off of the edge. We're going to use this an inflatable technique here. And just got to get that lower metal moving a little bit before we actually get into the impact point. You can see here I'm actually pumping. I'm pumping and I'm pumping. You can begin to see a little bit of movement down there. Just a little bit. So now that we moved it out just slightly, now I can drop the ball a little further, a little deeper into where the most important impact point is. Actually, before I had a lot of trouble sliding it in there. Now it's just you can kind of see that I'm able to fit it in there rather easily. Go ahead and inject our bike pump here. And now we're going for some bigger movement. We got the thing if you can just watch right there in the center of that damage, you can see it just begin to swell a little bit. And what we're doing, we're taking that lower pressure off of the impact point. So that's going to help us a lot when we get into doing the Porta-Power. And that is perfect. I got the pressure off the bottom there. That's our impact point I'm pointing to there. And we are going to, this is like a giant set that you just piece together. You're going to watch Alan here piecing it together. And just want to give you a warning on this Porta-Power. This is not something that you toy around with. If you're going to plan on using this, use it at your own risk. This is a very, very powerful tool, and be careful with it. So back into the tutorial here, Alan will literally piece these things together and make, in essence, a long rod that we're going to put in behind the impact point right here to push a ton of it out with a sweeping movement. You can see here how that impact point is up above that wall that we kind of pushed out. And right here's our Porta-Power. These are all just kind of clanked together. You do have to get it pretty close. I mean, on the other side over there, we actually got one with some teeth that are holding on the interior of the wheel well wall there. And right there is our pump. So this thing probably moves out 4 inches. So you definitely want to have it where it's a couple inches within its destination. Meaning that across here, now we've actually got it secured. We've got it solid. You can see the hydraulic right there that's extended out. That's the only part of this that extends, is that base hydraulic. Okay, so we kind of got it stuck into place here. We haven't done any major movement. Now I'm actually going to put my hand down here and hold it into place while Alan just slowly pumps it. I mean, he is just slowly pumping that thing out, and there you go. You've seen some movement there. And see how he just released it there. So he actually, right there, he did the release valve and let go, and now I'm replacing it on the deepest part while Alan's kind of pumping it up real nice and slow. And you're going to begin to see some metal move here. Big metal movements right there. You see how that just went all the way through the whole panel? If you actually rewind that and watch it again, you can see that impact point pulled in a lot, all the way up to that crown buckle that was all the way at the top of the panel. And now Alan's doing some more pushing, and we're going right into that deepest impact point. We want to try to iron that out the best possible. It's, in my opinion, when the dents get this big and deep, this is one of the only tools that's powerful enough to actually really move that thing. And now what I'm doing is I'm pushing a tension spot up there towards the top. You can see me kind of push it and release. And I'm going to come back in here and actually push some other spots. So I'm going to go around and kind of get a feel of this dent, which lows are going to be moldable, which ones can move their way out prior to even going into the crown work up at the top. It's a rule of thumb for me that if the crown work is not going to affect the movement of the dent, then I move the dent first. If the crown work is going to move the dent, then I'll do the crown work first. Either way, you just end up chopping up the crown. And it's kind of hard to keep a crown perfectly clean, but we want to try to keep it as absolute clean as possible. So now here we are doing some more pushing in there. And again, you can do this. It's much quicker. I have Alan there helping me. But I'm going to go ahead and apply a tension spot. And you can see it right there. That's an actual tension spot that I'm holding right below the crown work. So right there's my setup. I've got it anchored in the same spot. Be careful if you push too hard. You got to watch that other end to make sure it's not bending it up or chewing it up. And there has been times where the Porta-Power has been so strong that I've actually seen it go through a metal panel. So be very, very careful with it. So now that I've got that tension spot that you see down below the low that's right below my hammer strikes there, it's actually going to help me flow the crown out. If you can imagine, if you've seen one of our videos, the off-dolly technique, it's a technique of holding pressure on a low while you slap the crown, causing it to move towards that pressure point. And what that does, that makes a much more fluent crown movement, basically keeping it real nice and smooth and symmetrical during your crown removal process. And you can see there's just crowns and buckles all over this thing. In fact, when you start moving these dents out, you're going to find stuff emerge. I mean, don't think that you're ever exempt from checking it and doing crown work, stuff that you didn't even see to begin with. That's just the nature of these large dents. What I like to say, we try to break them up into pockets of smaller dents that are easier to deal with. And that's kind of where the Porta-Power comes in handy. It just gets that biggest, nasty bulk of the dent out. I mean, you can see we've already got considerable improvement as far as looking at it and something that we're willing to deal with and work with. We do got that giant low right there, and that is going to prove to be probably one of the hardest parts of this repair. And there you can see the gas cap, just that movement, taking that metal away, now the gas cap shuts. So that was something of concern. We thought we would maybe have to adjust it, but it seems that a bulk of the metal, when it got pushed out, it started to settle things back in. Now you can see here we got a big old crown coming in from this direction, so we're going to go in for a little bit of cross-checking crown work. There we go. There's my setup. You can see that we still have a tension spot being held by the Porta-Power in there. You can see the V going right above that tension spot. And right here is my knockdown method, and I'm using a soft tip knockdown at this point. Still got a hard crown here, and we do not want to make a bunch of major little choppiness in that line. Again, when you take down a crown, sometimes they're going to get a little bit out of control, but we want to try to minimize that as much as possible. So a nice soft tip works excellent in this situation. Not only do we use them on the back side of the panel, but we use them on the front side of the panel. So there we go. Bunch of tapping up through this crown. I mean, this thing runs all the way down nearly to the right-hand corner of that gas cap opening. There you go. You're starting to see some movement there. Like literally, after doing all of this knockdown work at the top of this damage, it rolled about 2 inches of the top of that dent out. You can kind of see it flowing into our tension hold spot there. You can see movement. And occasionally, it's amazing when you do your knockdown work, it's like you hit a sweet spot and you see some big movement. It's just, you just got to keep on working it back and forth. Think of yourself as like a typewriter, typing out, going back and forth, and then you set back to the beginning, and then back and forth, little by little, taking it down. There we go. Yeah, this is one of them dents where it's inevitable. You're going to be doing a lot of an exchange between pushing and tapping. So there you go. You can see about the level where I started with the crown work and about how far that big, deep crown came down. Now we're at a point where that low down there actually got my tension hold off of it. And that low down there is settling down rather nicely. So we're going to be able to make some really decent pushes. We've made that bigger dent kind of shallow up into a couple creases coming in at a couple different angles. Again, we're going to come back around and cross-check the other side. That's one thing you're going to find with your knockdown work. You may get one side down and get it looking real well, and then come back and do some tap work on the other side. And then you're going to wind up coming back to your original angle saying, man, this needs to come down a little bit more as well. Basically, but what we're really trying to do is just relieve the tension of this giant crown buckle so we can go back into some pushing. We weren't going to get much movement down below that crown with it still there. So we got to get as much of it out as possible because some of it will come out with the pushing process. Now, there's going to be a subtle crown in there regardless until we begin pushing out them lows. And now it's just kind of going around and doing some final tapping in some spots. You can see our impact point. I'm working that out a little bit. And down here at the bottom, if you remember the original one that we actually put that basketball behind, I mean, it had a nice little nasty crown down there as well. So right here, we're just using the, it makes it a little bit nice, especially using a longer hammer to get in this specific position. It's really hard to get your head at a distance and come up exactly at this angle using a hammer knockdown. Because I'm actually kind of hanging over the trunk there, like my feet are in the back where the taillight is, and I'm just hanging over and looking down at it at that angle that the crown's actually going. A crown is so much like a crease. Your light has to be parallel to the crown as much as it has to be parallel to work out a crease. So now getting a little bit of hammer and knockdown work here. I need that hard concentration right there in the peak of the crown. I was able to move the bulk of it down. But like I always tell you, I think the hammer, the blending hammer is great to make the metal flow. But when it comes to pinpoint precision, I just don't think there's much that can take out a hammer and knockdown when it comes to that pinpointing that crown just right on top of it and driving it to where it needs to be. And you can see here I actually switched to the top of my hammer. You guys rarely see that. I mean, I only bust out this move whenever it is in there. And I need some strong pressure behind my crown work. So I flipped it over and I'm actually using the top, the actual part you're supposed to use. I prefer it as a handle, but it's just driving. You can see right there, them last few hits really drove out a lot of that crown. So here's kind of an overall look at what we're working with at this point. Definitely that big low in the back is going to be the one that's much harder to deal with than anything on this vehicle. Here's a nice natural shot of it. You can see here I actually removed all of the hardware. Should have done this at first. You know, I got that dent guy in me that just says, don't take anything apart. But really, I just should have just removed all of this to begin with. But now I have caught up. Hasn't hurt any of our repair process. I will be drilling a hole back here. I don't want to go through any of them existing holes. That's where the plastic from the light fits in, and I don't want to mangle any of them. But yes, that right there is the impact point, and we're going to actually be able to get right on it now that we've detrimmed this quarter panel. And that is exactly what we're going for here. Same setup here, guys. Got the hydraulic pump hooked up. Got it right here on this the strong part of the panel here. And it is the teeth that I have, and that's kind of sitting around a bolt that's on that panel, and got it angled in just right to put over the top of that hole. So now I'm actually zeroing in right on that hole there, and that's where I want my big push. You can see here little by little, I'm pushing, 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 and you'll start to see some nice movement. There we go. That's exactly what I was looking for. A nice little tension spot right there on that deepest impact point. This thing is like a giant soft tip is what I'm amazed. I mean, it's like they give you this big rubber tip on that end that was like it was made to do paintless dent removal. So if you can imagine having a giant soft tip on the end of your tool, and then having an incredible hawk moment and being able to just move things that you were never able to move before. I mean, that's why I say to be careful with this thing, because the power of these things are absolutely, I mean, I've never seen anything like it as far as metal movement. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and put a tension hold again right on the deepest impact point. Start doing a little bit of that lower crown work. Them tension holds make all the difference. They really make the metal flow away from wherever you decide to locate them. So we're going to go ahead and do some more Porta-Power work here. And going to be going into some of the different low spots throughout this panel. And this right here, that panel right to the edge, we're going to show you, I'm going to show you exactly how far I can go in and get this thing. Because a lot of it is hidden underneath, like smashed underneath a wall that closes up till it gets to the quarter panel. So this is my deepest point with this tool, with the Porta-Power, with the big rubber tip on it. That's as far as I can go. But I'm going to use it because I'll tell you, if we had to do it with a tool, you can risk just chopping it up on the way out. And I want as much metal movement as possible. Basically, as little as work as possible is what I'm looking for when doing this. So the faster you are, the more money that you can make, and the more jobs that you can repair on a daily basis. And that's really what I'm trying to teach you here when it comes to this bulk metal movement. Is that the more metal that you can move at one time on a dent like this, the faster the outcome. Big pressure holds on that rear right up near the wheel well there, and you can see that I still have a ridiculously deep spot there, but I was definitely able to swell out about half of it. Still putting some pressure there. I'm trying to sink it in as deep as possible. So there we go. Right here's Alan again. This is our setup. You can do this with one person. You just got to pump it a little bit to get it wedged into place, check your places, step outside the car, and do some of the pumping yourself. Now, the only reason I have my hand inside the car while working this Porta-Power is because Alan it's not overpowering it. I mean, we're just pushing these a little bit. There is the occasion where you really need to overpower something, and at that point I would recommend not having any bodily parts anywhere near it. We've actually jacked up a car while we were straightening out the taillight. We had the taillight out, and that overhang underneath the taillight, it was bent down, and we were trying to straighten it out, and we've had the car completely off the ground with this thing. So just like any other jack, it's very powerful. But you can see here, I'm going into some of the little shallows throughout the panel and just getting that bulk metal movement. So my hand's in there, and I'm just taking it to where I need. I'm telling Alan to pump it so far, and then as soon as it gets to the point to where I need it, I go ahead and let him back off. So I kind of went through this thing and pushed out all the little lows as far as I possibly could, saving a lot of work. So now we're going to try this. I call this the jaws of life. And we're going to actually try to wedge it back in that dog leg area, or the rear part right up towards the end of the rear quarter and the wheel well, the part that we can't get this tool to. We're going to try to wedge that back there, and what happens whenever you pump this thing up, it actually opens up. You know, one of the things that we've had with this, you do have to put some tape around it to protect it from poking or gouging the panel. You can see Alan just connected it there, threaded it in, and see it just like opens up while he pumps it. And this thing is very, very powerful as well. I mean, this thing's a beast for sure. And there's a lot of times you can find a spot where you can use it. And now what Alan's putting on there is Gorilla Tape, essentially adding a soft tip to the end of this tool. And we're wrapping it up pretty good there, you can see. I mean, it has some squishiness there where we can actually move the metal without peckering it up. You know, that's the key. So there you go. You can see the inside. That's the wall that we're fighting right there. And this thing, we're going to actually wedge it down in there to place. And going to close it there and just wedge it in right behind it. And as soon as we get it into place, we're going to use it and pump it and open it up to move the dent. Now you can kind of imagine some of the spots you could use this. So we're getting a little bit there. We're in a little bit further. What I found in this specific location, however, was that I was moving it out, but it was kind of wanting to eject itself out at the same time. So, but hey, you know what? You do not get anywhere if you don't try new techniques. And this definitely saved us a little bit of time. I mean, I'm going to get to the point where it's actually lifting, as it lifts the edge off, actually as it lifts the round part of the dent off of that inner wall, we're able to inject it slightly further each and every time. Kind of reminds you of at the beginning when we used that basketball. We were just trying to eject it off the inner wall a little bit so we could begin using our Porta-Power and using it effectively. And now you can see there. See, it's getting just a little bit closer. Kind of took what would have been trying to take something that looks like you could fit a little football in it into something you can fit maybe a little baseball in it. I mean, every little bit helps for sure on a repair like this. And it definitely did not hurt taking a couple minutes to set this thing up and get it in there and try it out. So now you can see here, I'm actually going through with a soft tip. You can think of it like the Porta-Power was our giant soft tip and was making huge metal movements. And now we're taking a smaller soft tip and making smaller metal movements on all the little bitty lows that were in between. So we got the bulk, the large, the biggest amount just molded out with that giant soft tip. And it's going to leave little ripples and waves in between. So we're going to use our smaller soft tip and just iron all of them out best possible. Now, I'm not asking you at this point to finish. I mean, this is not a finishing stage in this damage. I'm going to call this getting it in the rough. So we want to get the general shape back before we even think about finishing this dent. I mean, we're definitely always planning ahead, and that's why we're using a soft tip so we don't make any irreversible marks on the panel. Yet, you want to take this thing, I talk about this a lot, you want to bring up this damage with balance, nice and symmetrical. That's why we go through the stages of using the basketball, then using the Porta-Power. The basketball moves much more metal. We used it in the location that we needed it, and then we used the Porta-Power, moves a ton of metal as well. And then we use a soft tip. So again, we're getting smaller on the tips as we go. And when we flow through this, we're going to go right into using sharper tips. And you can see the same way with the outside of the panel. And we start off using a soft tip knockdown, maybe that big rubber ball that's on the end of the hammer that I had earlier. And then we're using a soft tip, and then eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to begin dialing it in with a polished metal tip and a sharper nylon knockdown. So little by little, I'm moving the metal further back. You can see a little bit of the crown work that had gotten broken up throughout the crown removal process. No worries here. We will be treating them just kind of like little round dents and little lows. And again, just trying to make it symmetrical. We will wind up using the sharper knockdown in that area much, much more where we had to do the crown work. You know, a lot of this is going to be about blending that into the natural texture of the panel. So here we go, still making some tapping and some tap down on the outside of the panel. And you're always going to see little waves emerge. So you got to remember, the closer you get to finishing up a stage of this dent. So again, I'm breaking this thing into stages. We start out bulk metal movement, go down to each stage. You're going to get closer towards the end of that metal movement period, to where your pushing and your hammer knockdown work are going to come closer together. So you might do a push, 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 and then a knockdown, knockdown, knockdown. You know, and then it might come a little bit closer to that. You might be doing a push, a knockdown, a push, a knockdown, a push, a knockdown. So as you near the end of each phase of this, each phase of metal movement, your knockdown work is going to come much closer to your pushing work. And you can see here I'm actually hooking down that soft tip tool. Got to be careful when you do this. I'm going to tell you, because soft tips have the nature of popping off. So I'm doing a push, and occasionally I pull that thing out and take a look at it to make sure that it's not being kind of shoved down the towards the end of the tool, where it will slip and inject itself off, and then my tool will flip around and put a big old nasty high spot on the panel. That has happened, and it does happen, but we're going to try to not let it happen. But you can see here, hooking that soft tip down in there has been nice. I can't get it all the way to the very, very edge. However, I can open up the perimeter of that very edge and open that up so I can get another tool down in there for finishing work. You can see here I'm using the sharper tip knockdown on this one. I don't want the whole dent to fall back in. I want to pinpoint precision my push at this point. So essentially, every little push that I make, I want to be able to tap right on the top of it and move as least metal as possible back into the dent. And that's specifically in this area. One of the major reasons is why I was telling you earlier, because I can't get this soft tip all the way to the edge. So we have that, per se, that dent on the edge that's not even going to be lifted until we switch to a sharper tip. So we're trying to keep it away from falling right back on into that deepest part on the edge. Here we go, and I know this looks rough, but like I told you guys, this is going to be the hardest part of this entire repair, and the reasoning why, you know why, it's because we weren't able to move the metal, we weren't able to use bulk metal movement like we were for the rest of the dent. But that's all right, because that's where a little bit of skill comes in. And we just do our best to dial this thing in. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and switch out to a tool that kind of complements the bend of this panel here. You see how that thing just literally, if you can imagine holding the tool on the outside of the panel, and then its shape being just perfect for the area that you're trying to hit, That is exactly what this hockey stick tool was able to do for us in this scenario. And there's a lot of times before I do a dent, I measure the tool up to the outside of the panel just to make sure it's going to be something that's going to be complementary to what I'm doing inside of the panel. And this one has been great, but we still got to take it slow. I mean, this is a bare metal tip here, and we're getting into the very, very edge of this, and we're actually working some of the little holes around some of this bulk metal that we moved out with the soft tip. And it's just going to give us that pinpoint precision that we need in this area to get this thing flat. I mean, that's going to be the key. I mean, I'm going to get this thing as flat as possible in this situation, and then I'm moving on to the rest of the dent. And at the end, when I'm dialing in, when I'm taking a sharp mark circus tool and I am dialing in everything, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to dial this in as well. Oh, you see a little mishit that I had right there. That happens too. That's because it was right up near the firewall around the gas tank. And it holds a little bit more tension in that area, being right up against that double panel up there. Thank goodness, though, I'm able to reach it. And if not, we would be throwing a whale tail in there and trying to cut a little bit of glue, but it happens to be in a spot that we can reach, and no problem at all. So, hey, if you ever make a mistake, don't feel too bad. Just keep on rolling, keep on moving forward. Never get complacent, never get stuck in one spot. You know, a lot of times if there's a part of a dent that's starting to drive you crazy when you're breaking it up, then just move on to something else and come back to it at the end. It's a lot easier when you're 90% through this damage and everything is basically downhill at that point to come in and dial in a area that was kind of bothering you to begin with. A lot like playing golf. It's like a mental game at some point. Sometimes you want to do your most in one part, and if something just, occasionally, and I see this with my students all the time. They break up a large dent and they start to get frustrated, a body line or something like that starts to frustrate them. I say, well, how about you move on to this little shallow over here? You bring that up. And how about you move on to over here and you start bringing that up and then come back to your body line and finish there. And I'll tell you, 90% of the time when they come back, they're fresh, they much more confident, and that's just part of the game. You can see here, I'm still trying to shape up that edge. Little bit of knockdown work as well. But overall, I mean, compared to what we were dealing with 5-10 minutes ago, I mean, this thing is coming up nice, in my opinion. That back edge lip right there is going to be the only part of this repair that I'm going to wet sand. So there we go. I'm going to step back and get that subtle wave. And you can see what I'm using. I'm using the metal tip there. I want some nice pinpoint precision. That area's got a little bit of a bounce. So you want to use something that's actually going to drive the metal down like a metal tip. Now we're just kind of working that thing right off the edge, making our pushes down into the line down there. You can kind of still see the dirt line of where the molding was applied there. And you got to get that area straight, as straight as possible down there, because you want to have the least amount of gaps in this molding. However, I have looked at the other side, and just due to age, the thing is a little bit wavy. So I suspect we will be able to get this side almost, if not as good as the other side. So there we go. Feel a little bit more tension there. You'll notice something when I told you about the metal tip and the rubber tip. See, the rubber tip's actually moving metal here because it's not bouncing. Earlier, when we were a little further up, it was an area that bounced, so we want to use the metal tip to drive the metal down. So as you tend to get closer towards this lower half, you actually don't have as much bounce as when you get further up into the panel. You can see the metal laying down rather nicely down towards the where we're going to be putting back the molding. There we go, still making some pushes here. We're still using a soft tip at this point, by the way. Kind of switched out from the hockey stick there a little while ago. And now we're going to be using another soft tip. And this one's got a strong curve, and that's going to help me get the back edge of this panel. So we're going to be able to kind of curve it around and hit that whole back edge. Just begin to get that a little bit symmetrical as well. Definitely going to want to go ahead and bring that up into the rest of the dent, stabilizing it so we can work the middle of the damage as well. You can see they're getting pretty close to the edge there. Definitely moving a lot of metal. Still using that soft tip. We're still in that phase. The only sharp tip that I broke out at this point was the hockey stick. And that was just because I could not get a soft tip all the way to the back edge. So far so good with the soft tips. You can really begin to see the damage start to take shape at this point. I'm using a sharper tip knockdown on this because I'm wanting to pinpoint these little pushes that I'm making, and I'm wanting to lay them down flush. I was afraid that if I used the soft tip knockdown, I would kind of get that effect to where, you know, you push it up with a soft tip and you tap it down with the soft tip, you just bring it down into a low. So I'm pushing it, I'm overextending it a little bit with the soft tip, and then I'm tapping it with the sharper knockdown, trying to make it level. Essentially, I'm just not moving as much metal on the knockdown phase. Moving a bunch of metal on the pushing phase, and then just a little metal to lay it down flat on the knockdown phase. So there we go, still working that back edge, kind of working a little further into where the larger dent was. Kind of what I want you to do. I want you to rinse and repeat what I'm doing here. I'm going to move this technique all the way through this panel. And if you notice, because we're at a level to where we're doing our finishing with our soft tip work, my exchange between my pushing and tapping is getting closer. So I'll push 5, 6, maybe 10 little lows that are far away from each other, making sure I don't mound the whole area. So I'm essentially taking a little bitty low here and there, flipping it inside out, turning it into a high spot, and then coming in with that sharper knockdown and tapping down 5 or 6 spots. And now, as we get deeper and further into the panel, I'm going to use a longer tool that gives better leverage. So this is definitely a perfect spot to use a longer soft tip tool. And right here is my pushing technique. You can see here I'm using 2 hands. Even with this longer tool, I just have much more control, and it's a lot easier on your wrist and on your muscles when you begin working this with 2 hands. And you're also going to see that I'm going to change my elevation during the pushing process. So as of right now, I'm sitting up on a stool. I'm going to go down and I'm going to sit to the ground where I can actually look across that body line and begin pushing the body line as well. I mean, it's very important to be able to change your elevation throughout the repair process. And not only that, you want to change your light angles as well. So as I'm looking through here, you know, I see little bitty lows that I'm pushing, little bitty lows. I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is starting to take the pattern of this angle. So I look through at that angle and say, oh yeah, you know, there we go. Right there's a little low that I couldn't see from the original angle. You know, or maybe I need to step back here from behind it and do a little bit of knockdown work. Never get comfortable. Always move your light. Always move your elevation during a repair. Sometimes you're going to be standing up. Sometimes you're going to be sitting down. Other times you're going to be sitting on a stool. So I am constantly moving and changing my technique. And right here's another example of that. I'm actually looking down now at the dent and noticing right there at the top of my crown that I have some little bitty lows and a little bit of crown there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go in with the gutter hook, and I'm going to look down at this damage while I'm pushing it. It's just another example of your light being parallel with a crease or with a actual crown. So this is something that I can't see from the other angles. You can't see it from looking at it from sitting behind it. Because of that, you always got to change your angles. Like I tell you guys, never, ever, ever get complacent with your positioning when working a dent like this. As I always say, that you need to be bobbing and weaving. You need to be moving up, down, changing the head, changing that lighting position, changing your game plan, and you got to know when to change it. So here we go. There's an example of me looking down at that elongated crease and got my light all the way to the floor. Now cross-checking from the totally opposite angle after doing so. It's basically when I looked around the damage, it's where I found the best angle to begin finalizing and finishing the repair. And you see my signature move there, the hammer flip. I started out with that rubber tip and was moving a little bit of metal, flipped the hammer, bam, I'm into the steel on steel, pinpoint precision. And here we go. You want to take a look through our repair. This is after the soft tip phase of this. I mean, really just soft tipping it, maybe doing a little bit of metal to metal work, doing a little bit of that crown work up at the top and that low up at the top with a bare steel tool. But other than that, everything in between that has all been bulk metal movement with either the Porta-Power, soft tip, or using the basketball down at the very bottom. And now we're going to go into the bullet tip. Love the bullet tip. In my opinion, it's one of the better tools to clean up soft tip work. And then we're going to be moving to the circus tool eventually. But as of now, I'm going to stick to the bullet tip because it does push a little bit more metal than that razor sharp tip that you see in there, the circus tool. And now what I want you to do is pay attention to how I'm doing this as well. This is a lot like the steps that we dealt with during the soft tip pushing phase, except we're dealing with smaller little pockets that need to be pushed up. And the one thing that you're going to notice when you begin using a raw tip is that it's not going to be bringing up as much metal around the pushes as the soft tip, which basically puts you in a better scenario as far as the exchange between hammer and knockdown work. You know, this is definitely going to keep you out of the constant, using your hammer and knockdown. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to use it because you're definitely going to use it, but it's going to be more of a blending technique rather than really seriously taking down the high spots that you pushed in. As you can see there, I'm just working my way through this dent, taking every single little push. I'm trying to close up any little bitty hole that we have, any little dot that I see. I'm just taking the tip of this tool, putting it right in the middle of that dot, and pushing it up. At this point, when you're pushing with bare metal tips, you're not really over molding as much. So with the soft tip, you're kind of over molding, and I told you, like I said earlier, into a high spot and then pushing it down. Now, when you're moving the metal, you're trying to make it a little bit more symmetrical, and you're not really over molding it. But as you can see here, I kind of pushed up an area, and I'm blending that area into the circumference, into the surrounding panel. Definitely using the sharper knockdown at this point. The only time I think I would revert back to a soft tip knockdown is if I actually need to take down some metal the size of the soft tip. And there are hidden crowns in this dent. It's not to say that we couldn't revert back to that, the bigger knockdown work, but it's definitely not going to be for any of these little pinpoint precision pushes that you see going on here. Now, what I've seen where people have to use it more often is when they push a little too much in an area and they mound the whole thing up. So be strategic. You can see here I got like an actual crease right here that runs along the line where that molding is going to go back. We've got to get that out. Even though this is going to be under the molding, if we don't get this out, we're going to be able to see down underneath of it, and we're going to see this thing. So that was a tough area. I tried to push it with this gutter hook here, would not move it, so I'm bringing in the auto hammer. This right here's got a plastic tip on it, and I'm going to show you guys this. I'm going to buzz this thing out. Watch the speed of this. That was it. Right there. Literally. It just flipped this thing into a high spot. Let me let you guys take a look at that. So that's how long it takes for the auto hammer to take a crease and just flip it into an actual high spot. And once it is in this positioning where it's a elongated high spot now, I'm just going to go in and knock it down. So I basically took an inward crease, one that was tough. It was. I was trying to push it with the longer tools. Couldn't really get the type of leverage I wanted from up above there, and was able to take that thing and just iron it out in probably 5 seconds. And now I'm going to come in and do the knockdown work, and this is where you got to be precise and make it as absolute level to the surrounding metal around it as possible. So you can see here, this was actually a pocket that was stuck above our impact point. Or the deepest impact point, if you notice that hole that's down there below, that's where it was at, and this thing was just kind of riding above it. Really couldn't see it from the other angle, though. So there we go, taking kind of a progress report here, looking across the panel. Definitely starting to get this thing looking good. It's what I would call in the rough at this point. So we've definitely got it up to where it's nice and stable. And believe it or not, outside, 90% of customers would be happy at this level, especially with the type of damage that he had. When this guy was quoted $1,800 at a body shop, they were going to have to cut the quarter and replace it. And he wasn't even guaranteed a color match. They said since the car was so old, they couldn't match the color. Guy actually loves this Cadillac. And so I'm gonna do it up. I'm gonna fix it up. We're going into the last phase here of pushing, and that is with the very, very sharp circus tool that you see here. So now I'm taking some of the very, very smallest lows, and I'm making little pushes connecting the dots in between them. This is what I would call picking the orange peel. And what that means here, there's a lot of controversy about that, but here's what that means to me. You got a bunch of little miniature dents because of the pressure, the way that you worked up the damage. You're not going to roll every single one of them out without working the pressure edges, things like that. It's basically essentially going to turn into a bunch of small little waves that you have to pick out. Now, we're not creating new orange peel here. We just got a bunch of little bitty dings that we're taking our tool right behind that little bitty ding, and we're trying to push it up flush with the perimeter around it. This right here is where the finishing work comes in, and it's very important to use sharp tip tools in this scenario because they are going to aid to the finishing of this process, of this repair. And the thing about sharp tip tools, I did some examples in some of the beginner curriculum to where when you're fixing a dent, you do not have to knock down as much when using a sharp tip. It just doesn't over mold or over push like the other tips that you could use, like the soft tip or the Porta-Power or the basketball. But would you want to start a dent with it? No, not this dent. Yeah. You would have a lot of problems starting this dent with a sharper tip. But you can see here what I was telling you earlier. I'm actually going into the very edge of this panel where you've seen that hardest work there, and I'm picking it clean. I'm taking that sharp tip and just playing a game of connect the dots here, basically. You can see here a little further back view there. And we got our little ding up above there, cleaned up, the one that I accidentally had put in there. And just, again, playing a little game of connect the dots. Going to make this thing flow. And that's really what I tried to do on the edge of this panel, because it does have stamping from the factory. I just try to match that. I don't try to take out the little low, the stamping, stuff like that comes from the factory. I just try to take what I'm doing here and match it. Now, again, this is the only spot that I'm doing some wet sanding work on it. I definitely think it will help out the quality of the finish of the repair. So a little bit of 2000 grit and a little bit of polishing will go a long way on this edge. And now we are all finished. And I want to take a look at what we had originally here. I mean, look at the size of the mammoth of this giant quarter panel dent. And, you take a look at it here, and we'll take a look at some of the afters. Now, would I say it's perfect? No. I would not say it's perfect. I would not say it's flawless. In fact, I would never even guarantee to a customer that this thing would be absolutely flawless. However, was he absolutely amazed? Yes. That is what is super important to me, is that the client and the customer is happy with our repair work. And you can see here in the natural reflections, I was able to blend that edge in rather nice. Just kind of made it look like a natural, kind of made it flow into the edge of the panel naturally. And that's what you want to do here. When you have an area that is that deep and that smashed in, flowing it naturally into the edge of the panel is a perfect technique. And you can see here, I got the Porta-Power laying on the ground that's kind of cross-checking for us, up there through that upper crown. And you can get a deep look at some of these reflections here. So that is what the customer's looking at. In fact, we're going to take it outside here, and I'll show you what the customer was looking at when he came to pick it up. You can see here the body line fell in place nice. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a little bit wider on the other side as well. And we do have a little bit of looseness up here on the edge, but one thing that I've noticed is it's that way on the other side as well. So I do think we got it just about as close as it was on the other side, which is really ideal. An older car like this, you're going to have, over time, that's just going to happen. Things are going to get loose. You can see the gap right there. And there's a decently wide gap at the bottom of the quarter panel over there. You can see here that it's a little bit loose. I'm able to shake it. So I'm confident that we did what we could to get that thing about as close fitting as it possibly could. And in fact, we actually we used epoxy to put the molding clips back in, and we did do a little bit of double face taping, some of that really strong 3M tape, and it fit back on amazingly. Here we go again, some real nice tight reflective views of this damage. I would never say perfect, but I will tell you, the owner, he was really happy with it. And you can kind of look through here and look through the bottom of that panel, the way that it's shaped up. You can see the edge right through there, shaped up pretty nice. And the gas cap closes, so we were worried about that. But let's take a look at it outside what it was originally. So here's our original outdoor look here. So this is what the customer seen when he dropped it off to me. And I'll be honest with you guys, when I first looked at this, I was thinking, no way. I talked to the client, the customer, and he agreed that he would pay me $100 just to look in to see if it would move. And that is why I actually did this job. Because I knew that if I took it apart, at least I'd make a little bit of money. And we just started working it and started working out for us. So right there's the gas cap that wouldn't shut. And let's go ahead and do the finished pan here. On the outside, we'll talk about a little bit of the things that you learned during this process. And one of the things is bulk metal movement, guys. When you use that Porta-Power, you're moving the metal out with a giant tip. When you get stuck in an area down there, like the very, very bottom, get yourself a basketball pump, use an inflatable, move it out clean. And when you get to the points to where you absolutely have to pick it, do as little as possible with a raw, bare tip that you can. And when you do, you got to take it slow. That edge, in my opinion, turned out really good for what it was, and I'm quite happy with the repair. So I'm very, very happy with it. But you can see here, guys, that using this Porta-Power, in my opinion, was the only way to bring the damage up this clean. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, be careful, guys, when you use this Porta-Power. When you get it, I picked up mine at Harbor Freight. I think it was like $129, a cheap investment, but I think it'll help you out when it comes to these large repairs. I want to thank you again for checking out this tutorial. And as always, guys, I look forward to seeing you on the next one.